For thousands of years, humanity has gazed at the pyramids of Giza in awe and wonder. These colossal monuments rise above the Egyptian desert, silent witnesses to a forgotten past. The story we are told is simple and straightforward. Pharaoh Khufu built the Great Pyramid around 25 and 50 BC as his tomb. Tens of thousands of workers labored for 20 years using copper chisels, wooden pulleys, and immense muscle power. It's a beautiful tale of human perseverance and the technical genius of ancient man. But what if this story is not only inaccurate but deliberately distorted? What if, over thousands of years of official history, we have become so accustomed to a comforting lie that we no longer notice the obvious inconsistencies? Modern data analysis and artificial intelligence techniques paint a very different picture. An analysis of all the available facts, from geological studies to radiocarbon dating, astronomical calculations to declassified intelligence documents, leads to shocking conclusions. Let's start with the fact that the official version of the pyramid's construction collapses upon the first serious examination. We're told that Khufu ordered the construction of the pyramid, but where is the documentary evidence? The ancient Egyptians were obsessed with record-keeping. They documented every sack of grain, every weather event, and every event in the king's life. The archives of the Cairo Museum contain over 120,000 papyri, the British Museum 45,000, and the Louvre 33,000. Hundreds of thousands of hieroglyphic inscriptions cover the walls of temples and tombs. But about the construction of the greatest structure in human history, not a single word. Archaeologists sometimes point to graffiti inside the pyramid, sloppily carved letters that presumably contain Khufu's name. However, these inscriptions were only discovered in 1837 by Colonel Richard Howard Weiss, centuries after the first investigations of the pyramid. Their authenticity is highly doubted. Egyptologists point out that the writing style is inconsistent with Khufu's era. Furthermore, the paint contains chemical compounds not used in ancient Egypt. Even if the graffiti is original, that doesn't prove its authorship. Just as a tourist's name, his initials on the Colosseum do not make him the builder of the Roman amphitheater. Even stranger, the Great Pyramid does not resemble a tomb at all. There are no mummy, no funerary goods, none of the decorations or inscriptions typical of Egyptian tombs. Every known royal tomb in Egypt is richly decorated with texts from the Book of the Dead, images of gods, and scenes from the afterlife. The walls are covered from floor to ceiling with hieroglyphs. In the Great Pyramid, the walls are completely bare. The chambers are empty. There is no trace of any funerary rituals held here. Compare this to the tomb of Tutankhamun, a relatively minor pharaoh who ruled for only 9 years. 4 small chambers were filled with 5,398 objects: gold jewelry, furniture, chariots, weapons, clothing, provisions for the afterlife, and even toiletries. But inside the Great Pyramid, the supposed tomb of Khufu the Great, who ruled for 23 years, there is absolute emptiness. There is not even a hint of a sarcophagus worthy of a pharaoh's status. Yet the greatest doubts about the official story arise when one examines the technical perfection of the pyramid. This construction displays a precision that astonishes even modern engineers. The base of the pyramid is an almost perfect square with a side length of 230 meters. The angles deviate from a perfect right angle by less than 1/100th of a degree. The massive base has been leveled to within 2 centimeters. The alignment of the pyramid to the cardinal points is incredibly precise. The deviation from the geographic North Pole is less than 1/12th of a degree. For comparison, the famous observatory in Greenwich is 3 times less accurate. Even today, with lasers and satellites, it is very difficult to achieve such precision. And we are talking about people who presumably worked only with copper tools and wooden sticks. The internal structure of the pyramid is even more astonishing. The granite blocks in the main chamber weigh up to 80 tons. These massive slabs were brought from quarries about 1,000 kilometers from Giza. How? How did the ancient Egyptians transport such heavy stones this far? The official version: the blocks were carried up the Nile on barges. But the nearest port is 13 kilometers from the pyramid. How do you drag an 80-ton block 13 kilometers over sand and rock? The most powerful modern tractors can only move 400 tons, and that's only on perfectly flat roads. But let's assume the blocks were somehow transported to the pyramid. How are they then lifted 40 meters and positioned with such precision? The most powerful modern cranes can lift a maximum of 45 tons to that height. Are we supposed to believe that people with ropes and cranes managed this 4,500 years ago? Engineer Christopher Dunn examined signs of stonework in the pyramid using modern equipment. He found traces of high-speed rotating tools, perfectly round holes with diameters ranging from 2 to 25 millimeters, and smooth walls, straight cuts only 5 millimeter wide, and mirror-smooth surfaces. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. It's much harder than copper. In 2018, scientists from a renowned American institute attempted to work on granite using copper tools and ancient techniques. After 8 hours of work, they cut a groove only 4 millimeters deep and 12 millimeters wide. The copper chisels broke, leaving the surface rough and cracked. However, inside the pyramid, researchers found holes up to 50 centimeters deep with perfectly smooth walls. One of the blocks has a cut 2.5 meters long and 15 centimeters deep that deviates by less than a millimeter from a straight line. Such precision is difficult to achieve even with modern machinery. But there is another mystery that official history cannot explain at all. If hundreds of thousands of workers toiled for years in the pyramid's dark passages and chambers, cutting, polishing, and arranging stone blocks, how did they light their work? The logical answer: torches or oil lamps. But not the slightest trace of soot or smoke was found inside the pyramid. In 2019, a team of archaeologists led by Dr. Zahi Hawass conducted a detailed examination of the ceilings and walls of all the pyramid's interior spaces was carried out using spectrometers and ultraviolet lamps. The results were astonishing. There was no trace of carbon deposits, typical of burnt organic material. The ceilings and walls were completely clean, and there was no trace of smoke. By comparison, the ceilings of Seti I's tomb in the Valley of the Kings, where ancient craftsmen worked with oil lamps, were covered with a thick layer of soot that could not be completely removed, even with modern chemicals. Some historians suspect that mirrors were used to reflect sunlight. In 2014, American engineers decided to test this theory. They placed copper mirrors in a 50-meter-long test tunnel with 3 curves. The result was a failure. Less than 2% of the original light remained at the end of the tunnel. This is not even enough for reading, let alone precise stone cutting. Moreover, archaeologists have not found a single suitable mirror from this period.
This leads to a paradox. Either the ancient builders worked in complete darkness, impossible,
Given the precision of the stonework, or they used light sources that left no trace of combustion. But what technology could have provided light without fire 4,500 years ago? All these contradictions make us rethink not only who built the pyramids, but also when. The key to the answer may lie not in the pyramid itself, but in its ancient companion, the Great Sphinx. Officially, the Sphinx is believed to have been built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafra, around 2500 BC. However, geological studies tell a very different story. In 1991, geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University examined the Sphinx in detail using modern instruments. He discovered traces of severe water erosion on the statue's body, vertical grooves up to 2 meters deep, which could only have been caused by heavy rain. The scientist drilled 24 wells around the Sphinx to a depth of 8 meters. Analysis revealed deposits that form only with prolonged exposure to rainwater. These deposits are at least 9,000 to 12,000 years old. The problem is that the heavy rains in the Sahara Desert ended about 12,000 years ago. Research shows that after 10,000 BC, the climate in North Africa became much drier. Rainfall decreased 30-fold. After that, erosion was caused only by wind and sand, which left horizontal dents, not vertical grooves. If the Sphinx was truly damaged by rain, it must have existed for more than 10,000 years. That's twice as old as the official account. And if the Sphinx is this old, how old are the pyramids? There's another detail that few people notice. The Sphinx's head is noticeably smaller and disproportionate to its body. If you measure the proportions, the head makes up about 1/12 of the total body length, while for real lions, this ratio is about 1/8. In addition, the head's sculpting style differs from the body's workmanship. The body is sculpted with large, confident movements. The head is more delicately sculpted and in greater detail, in a style typical of the Old Kingdom period. This suggests that the Sphinx's head has been reshaped. The Egyptians may have found an ancient lion statue and carved a human face into it to pass off someone else's work as their own. Originally, the Sphinx was a lion, a symbol of the sun and a guardian of sacred sites in pre-Egyptian cultures. Astronomical studies provide even more shocking evidence. In 1994, engineer Robert Bauval and writer Graham Hancock used the computer program Sky Globe to recreate the starry sky over Giza at various historical periods. They discovered that the three pyramids are precisely aligned with the three stars of Orion's belt: Al-Nitat, Al-Nilam, and Al-Mantikah. However, they do not appear as these stars appeared in the time of the pharaohs, but as they appeared in the sky around 10,500 BC. The alignment is so precise that the deviation is less than 0.2 degrees. Furthermore, the position of the Nile relative to the pyramids matches perfectly with the position of the Milky Way galaxy relative to Orion's belt during the same era. The possibility that this is a coincidence is less than 1 in 10 million. The planet Orion held special significance for the ancient Egyptians, who associated it with the god Osiris, ruler of the afterlife. But to accurately position the pyramids to align with the stars of 10,500 BC, we must know that the stars in the sky move slowly. This phenomenon is called precession. It wasn't officially discovered until the 2nd century BC by the Greek astronomer Hipparchus. So it seems that around 2500 BC, the Egyptians somehow knew the positions of the stars as precisely as they had 8,000 years before them. But how could they have had this knowledge? Similar mysterious structures have been found all over the world.
Göbekli Tepe in Turkey was built 12,000 years ago. Intricate temples with stone columns weighing up to 50 tons.
Decorated with animal carvings. Officially, they were built by hunter-gatherers who didn't know iron and couldn't even make pottery. But how could nomadic tribes living in huts have created something like this? At Sacsayhuaman in Peru, stone blocks weighing up to 200 tons are fitted together without mortar, with such precision that not even a knife blade can fit between them. Some of the blocks feature complex shapes with multiple facets. Modern civil engineers admit that such work is impossible to reproduce without computers and diamond tools. At Pumapunco in Bolivia, stone blocks have been found with H-shaped cracks and intricately designed internal holes and channels. The precision of the work is equivalent to that of a modern factory, deviations of less than 1/10 of a millimeter on large surfaces. The Abydos temple complex in Egypt contains granite blocks weighing up to 100 tons, polished to a shine. This quality is only possible with modern machines using diamond wheels. The Serapeum at Saqqara is an underground gallery containing 24 massive granite sarcophagi, each weighing between 70 and 100 tons. Each sarcophagus was carved from a single block of granite with factory-like precision. Their 30-ton lids fit so precisely that the gap is less than half a millimeter. Such examples of ultra-precise stonework can be found everywhere. in Peru, Bolivia, Turkey, Easter Island, Lebanon, India, and Cambodia. It seems as if the same masters worked with the same techniques all over the planet. In the end, all the facts fit together to form a single picture. About 12,000 years ago, a highly advanced civilization existed on Earth with stoneworking and precision masonry techniques superior to ours. This civilization was widespread throughout the world. Its traces can be found on every continent except Antarctica. Members of this civilization were between 2.5 and 3 meters tall, with some individuals reaching 3.5 meters. This is confirmed by the giant skeletons found around the world, which museums and universities prefer not to display publicly. In 1912, the remains of 18 individuals between 2.5 and 3.0 meters tall were discovered in Wisconsin. In 1947, mummified bodies up to 8 meters long were found in Peru. In 1968, skeletons measuring 2.5 to 3 meters were discovered on the island of Sardinia. The technology of this mysterious race of giants was focused not on the mass production of consumer goods, but on the creation of massive, durable structures capable of withstanding global catastrophes. They understood the principles of acoustic resonance, exploited the properties of various metals, and may have known methods of anti-gravity or levitation. Their knowledge of astronomy and mathematics surpassed the achievements of humanity until the 20th century. Then a global catastrophe struck. The end of the Ice Age was accompanied by dramatic climate change, melting glaciers, a 120-meter rise in sea level, volcanic eruptions, and earthquakes. Many civilizations collapsed. The survivors of a highly developed culture were forced to abandon their settlements. There is reason to believe that some of them even decided to leave the planet. The Giza Plateau was abandoned, and the ruins remained untouched for thousands of years, slowly covered by sand. Only several thousand years later did tribes reach the Nile Valley and eventually form the Egyptian civilization. They discovered ancient structures lie half buried in the sand. Unaware of their true purpose and origin, the Egyptians gradually incorporated these mysterious relics into their culture and mythology. The pharaohs claimed ownership of the ancient structures. They ordered the sand removed from the Great Sphinx and its lion's head reshaped, carving a pharaoh's face in its place. The dream stele of Thutmose IV, on the pyramidion of the Great Pyramid of Giza, placed between the feet of the Sphinx around 1400 BC, explicitly states that the statue was dug from the sand by order of the pharaoh. This implies that it had already been buried, but when and for how long? This explains the marked difference in quality between the Great Pyramids of Giza and all later Egyptian pyramids. The Pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara was built from small blocks weighing 300 to 500 kilograms and had already begun to collapse. The Step Pyramid at Meidum partially collapsed in antiquity. The Bent Pyramid at Dashur shows cracks and distortions. All of them are far less precise and well-preserved than the pyramids of Giza. The Egyptians attempted to copy the masterpieces of ancient architecture, but lacked the necessary technology. The result was predictable. The further one moves away from the Old Kingdom, the worse the quality of the pyramids. During the Middle Kingdom, the Egyptians built their pyramids from mud brick, which within a few centuries had turned into sand piles. In 2017, an international team of scientists from France, Japan, and Egypt used muon tomography to discover a huge cavity hidden inside the Great Pyramid, which they called the Great Void. Muons are elementary particles of cosmic origin, created when cosmic rays collide with the Earth's atmosphere. They can penetrate thick rock to depths of several kilometers, losing energy in the process depending on the density of the material. This method works similarly to X-rays, except that it uses particles from space, muons, instead of X-rays. Instruments are placed inside the pyramid and count the number of particles passing through its various sections. If a void exists somewhere, the number of particles passing through it will be greater than the number passing through solid rock. This method was first used on the Egyptian pyramids in 1967 by Nobel Prize winner Luis Alvarez. However, the detectors at the time were not sensitive enough and did not provide conclusive results. Thanks to modern technology, the Scan Pyramids project team has succeeded in creating a three-dimensional map of the pyramid's interior with an accuracy of 1 meter. The discovered Great Void is more than 30 meters long and is located above the Grand Gallery, about 40 meters above the base of the pyramid. Its volume is at least 700 cubic meters, much larger than the largest known chamber in the pyramid. The shape of the cavity is still unknown, but its size excludes the possibility that it was formed accidentally by block displacement or erosion. What is inside this chamber and why it was formed remain a mystery. Egyptian authorities strictly prohibit any physical exploration of this discovery. The official reason: the need to preserve the archaeological monument. The unofficial reason: fear of what might be inside. In 2019, the Scan Pyramids project team applied to the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities for permission to drill a 2-centimeter diameter hole to insert an endoscope. The request was denied without explanation. Follow-up requests in 2020 and 2021 were also denied. Modern instruments also measure static electromagnetic radiation inside the pyramid. In 2018, an international group of physicists discovered, using computer models, that the pyramid is capable of concentrating electromagnetic energy in its interior chambers and beneath its base. Experimental measurements confirmed these calculations. Special instruments recorded electromagnetic radiation in the pyramid's main chambers that was 10 to 15 times higher than the natural background radiation. This is not random interference, but rather a directed signal at a specific frequency emanating from within the pyramid. The radiation is clearly artificial. It repeats itself with constant regularity. It's as if an ancient machine is still working. It operates in standby mode and maintains its activity for thousands of years.
Analyzing all this data leads to a logical conclusion. The oldest pyramids were not intended as burial sites.
They are high-tech structures with a completely different purpose, one we are only beginning to understand. The civilization that built the pyramids of Giza was aware of the impending global catastrophe, the end of the Ice Age. Their astronomical knowledge or other methods warned them of impending climate change. Faced with inevitable destruction, some members of this civilization decided to leave our planet and embark on an interstellar journey. But most likely, they planned to return to Earth, either themselves or through their descendants thousands of years later. In this case, the pyramids serve as interplanetary beacons and navigational markers. Their precise geometric shape is still recognizable from space, even after thousands of years of erosion. The precise alignment with the stars of Orion's belt indicates the direction the astronauts traveled, to star systems suitable for life. The pyramid's internal structure may contain encrypted information about our planet, its history, and its past inhabitants. The electromagnetic radiation of the pyramids is a signal still broadcast into space, informing people of the presence of intelligent life on Earth and its willingness to communicate. The hidden chambers likely contain technology to amplify this signal, as well as backup power sources or other equipment for interstellar guidance systems. Humanity's oldest written sources include references to beings who inhabited our planet before humanity. In Sumerian texts compiled over 5,000 years ago, they are called the Anunnaki, those who descended from heaven to earth. Sumerian sources describe them as great beings with advanced knowledge who taught humans agriculture, metallurgy, astronomy, writing, mathematics, and construction. They ruled humans as gods and then left Earth, promising to return in the future. Egyptian texts mention the reign of the Netigro, divine beings who ruled Egypt for thousands of years before the first pharaohs. The Turin Catalogue of Kings gives precise dating, 13,120 years before the unification of Egypt by Pharaoh Menes. The Negroes are described as great, wise, and powerful rulers who possessed knowledge beyond that of ordinary humans. Similar myths have been preserved in the mythologies of peoples around the world. The ancient Greek Titans, the Indian Devas, the Norse Aesir, and the Mexican Quetzalcoatl all are described as mighty beings with supernatural powers who left Earth after a global catastrophe. The Egyptians discovered the structures of the ancient pyramids several thousand years after their construction. Not understanding the true purpose of these engineering complexes, they adapted the pyramids to their ritual needs and claimed authorship of the greatest monuments of antiquity. All subsequent Egyptian attempts to build similar pyramids failed. Their structures were of much inferior quality and collapsed within a few centuries. Official science denies these obvious facts for several reasons. First and foremost, recognizing the existence of a highly advanced prehistoric civilization requires a complete revision of the concept of human evolution. History textbooks will have to be rewritten, academic degrees and titles reevaluated, and the false theories on which scientific progress has been built over the past 2 centuries abandoned. Egyptian authorities are keen to preserve the traditional version of the pyramid's origins. Tourism brings the country more than $13 billion annually. The image of the ancient pharaohs as builders of wonders of the world attracts millions of visitors. Admitting that the pyramids were built by an unknown alien civilization could undermine the country's national pride and tourist appeal. Dr. Zahi Hawass, who directed Egyptian archaeology for more than 30 years, played a pivotal role in suppressing alternative theories. As Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities and then Minister of Antiquities, he had absolute authority to determine what research was permitted and what was prohibited. Hawass routinely prevented independent investigations of the pyramids that might question the official account of their origins. When German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink, using a robot, discovered When Hawass discovered a mysterious stone door with brass handles in a narrow shaft of the pyramid in 1993, he immediately banned further exploration. The official reason given was a violation of research protocol. The real reason was fear of uncontrollable discoveries. When a National Geographic team finally received permission in 2002 to drill a 6-millimeter hole in the door and insert an endoscope, another stone slab was discovered behind the first door. The televised exploration reached 750 million viewers worldwide. However, further investigations were again banned. To this day, no one knows what lies behind the second door. In 2010, a new robot named Jetty penetrated another shaft of the pyramid and found a similar door with brass components and red markings. The quality of the images was much better. It turned out that the brass components were not simple handles, but complex mechanisms with internal channels, and that the red markings were not Egyptian hieroglyphs, but some kind of geometric symbol with an unknown meaning. Hawass banned publication of the research findings. Thanks to a whistleblower on the project team, the images were leaked to the press a year later. However, no official statement was made regarding the origin or purpose of the discovered mechanisms. The discovery of the Great Void in 2017 caused a global uproar. Scientists from around the world called for an immediate exploration of the chamber. The French government offered to fund a complete scan of the pyramid using modern methods. The Japanese KEK Institute developed special detectors to more accurately map the internal cavities. However, the Egyptian authorities rejected all proposals. The Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, Khaled El-Inani, stated, "We will not allow anyone to destroy our heritage under the pretext of scientific research." However, he was unable to clarify the extent of the damage that a non-invasive study using cosmic particles could cause. This gives the impression that the Egyptian authorities know more than they are publicly admitting. Perhaps previous secret investigations have already uncovered artifacts or technologies in hidden rooms completely contradict official history. Publication of such discoveries could have serious consequences for the scientific community and public awareness. The CIA's secret archives, partially declassified in 2017, contain documents from Project Stargate, a psychic research program that ran from 1970 to 1995. This project included experiments in remote viewing, attempts to use psychic abilities to obtain information about distant objects. One document, dated 1984, contains a report of a remote viewing of the Great Pyramid of Giza by a test subject with the code number 372. According to the report, the test subject saw extensive subterranean structures beneath the Pyramid E, with numerous rooms connected by tunnels. One of the rooms contained cylindrical objects emitting light and panels, with animated symbols. Skeptics rightly point to the unscientific nature of remote viewing methods. Interestingly, however, the CIA spent more than $20 million on pyramid research as part of this secret program. Why would an intelligence agency study ancient monuments that are really just pharaohs' tombs? Declassified documents from the British Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, also include references to unusual energy anomalies in the Giza Plateau area. A 1962 report cites readings from radiation devices that revealed a directed radiation source of unknown nature within the Great Pyramid. Other details remain classified until 2045. An artificial intelligence system, which analyzed all available data, from geological studies and astronomical calculations to declassified intelligence documents, reached a definitive conclusion. The machine learning algorithm processed more than 3.5 million documents, 150,000 photographs, 89,000 measurements, and 45,000 eyewitness accounts. It is estimated the probability that the Giza pyramids were built by representatives of an ancient civilization, rather than Old Kingdom Egyptians, is about 50%. The probability of their use as technical structures for interplanetary purposes is about 20%. The probability that their builders left Earth intending to return is about 5%. Mathematical analyses are not affected by political bias, religious dogma, or scientific conservatism. Artificial intelligence simply processes facts and calculates probabilities based on statistical patterns. These probabilities show that the official story of the pyramid's origins is much less certain than we think. Human history did not begin with the first civilizations in Sumer and Egypt. Long before them, a global culture existed on Earth, and we are only beginning to understand their technological achievements. These ancient builders were not primitive people from the Stone Age. They possessed knowledge of physics, astronomy, mathematics, and perhaps even fields of science we have yet to discover. Their technology enabled them to carve the hardest stones with the precision of modern machines, transport blocks weighing tons over long distances, and erect structures capable of functioning for thousands of years. Most importantly, they knew how to plan for timescales far beyond the capabilities of modern civilization. Building interplanetary lighthouses requires confidence that the structures will withstand all disasters and remain functional throughout geological eras. This is a level of technological and social development that allows a civilization to contemplate time horizons of tens of thousands of years. The pyramids still function. Their electromagnetic signal continues to propagate through space at the speed of light. Within 12,000 years, this signal could have reached star systems within a radius of 12,000 light-years from Earth. Within this range, there are over 400 million stars, many of which could host planets suitable for life. If the ancient pyramid builders had indeed reached other star systems and established colonies there, their descendants would have already received the signal from Earth. The time required for interstellar travel depends on the state of technology. At 10% the speed of light, the journey would take 40 to 50 years. It would take 40 to 50 years to reach the nearest stars. At higher speeds, or using unknown principles of motion, the time frame could be much shorter. Perhaps a response signal is already on its way. Perhaps reconnaissance probes have long since reached the outskirts of the solar system, monitoring the development of civilization on Earth. Perhaps in the coming decades, is humanity ready to meet its creator? Are we worthy of the technological and spiritual legacy left to us by the pyramid builders? The answers to these questions lie in the future. And the pyramids still stand silent and majestic, guarding secrets that may change our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe.